Although Sakura cherry blossom trees have spread all throughout the world now, nowhere other than Japan are they more cherished and celebrated. Hi, I'm Josh, and welcome to Shizen Style, where we often talk about Japan, nature, and human creativity. I've come across a number of interesting facts surrounding the Sakura, or cherry blossom. And the first one is, cherry trees have a short lifespan. Typically, they only last about 16 to 20 years, but certain species have a much longer life expectancy. Black cherry trees, for example, can live up to 250 years. Number 2, the oldest tree in Japan is over 2,000 years old. So although we just talked about the cherry tree's short lifespan, there are exceptions to the rule. You can find Jindai Sakura within the grounds of the Jisoji Temple in Yamanashi, near the famous Mount Fuji, with a root circumference of 13.5 meters. The third interesting fact is there's a cherry tree whose seeds traveled in space. Inside the same temple that holds the Jindai Sakura, Jisoji Temple, there is another interesting tree called the Uchu Sakura, or the Space Cherry Blossom. It's a bit smaller, but it was cultivated from seeds taken from the Jindai Sakura. There's more though. Back in November of 2009, these seeds from the Jindai Sakura were taken into space by NASA, and they spent about 8 months in the space station circling the globe. They brought a total of 118 seeds to space, but only 2 managed to bloom, one being the Uchu Sakura at Jisoji Temple. What's even more interesting, though, is that although a typical cherry blossom has 5 petals, the blossoms of this tree has 6. 4. Over 200 varieties of cherry blossoms exist. There are several types of cherry blossoms, at least 200, but different sources have also placed that number at 800 as well. With all of the crossbreeding and hybridization of species, the number is really hard to pin down. Needless to say, it's a lot. This will be noticeable when you see that some are light pink, some are deeper shades of pink, and some are even white. Some Yoshino is the most common varietal in Japan, but one thing's for sure, they're all equally beautiful. 5. The world cherry blossom capital isn't in Japan. The cherry blossom capital of the world is actually in the US, Macon, Georgia, to be exact, with about 350,000 Yoshino cherry blossom trees. Each year it holds the International Cherry Blossom Festival. While these trees are not native to the South, William A. Fickling Sr., a local realtor, discovered one in his own backyard in 1949. On a business trip to Washington, D.C., he learned more about cherry blossoms and aimed to bring them back to his hometown. 6. Hanami flower viewing. Picnicking beneath cherry blossom trees is a real Japanese tradition. The century-old custom is known as Hanami, which means flower viewing. Early records hint that the tradition began with emperors and members of the imperial palace, feasting and partying under the tree's blooming branches. Hanami can also refer to ume plum viewing, although most people associate it with cherry blossoms because it's a little later in the season when you can reserve your spot outside under the tree and sit and enjoy it all day in nice spring weather. 7. Cherry blossoms are native to the Himalayas. These flowers likely originated somewhere in Eurasia before migrating to Japan. Both China and South Korea claim to be the originators of the cherry blossom, which is still undetermined. But undoubtedly, the popularity and appreciation of the cherry blossom tree flourishes mostly in Japan. 8. Cherry blossoms are Japan's national flower. The cherry blossom is Japan's national flower and appears on the 100 yen coin. These pale blooms are a symbol of more than just spring. They stand for renewal and hope. 9. The flower petals are edible. Sakura are often referred to as ornamental cherry trees and shouldn't be confused with cherry trees that produce fruit for eating. But the cherry blossoms and the leaves are edible and used in many traditional Japanese sweets and teas. Salt pickling blossoms in hot water are called sakura-yu and drunk at festive events like weddings in place of green tea. They're first pickled and then used in recipes for mochi cakes, candies, and even cookies. You can also brew sakura blossom tea or make cocktails with the preserved blossoms. 10. Cherry blossoms symbolize renewal and impermanence. Known as Sakura in Japanese, these pale blooms are a symbol of spring because it is a time of renewal. However, because the blooms are short-lived, they're also symbolic of the fleeting nature of life. The association of the cherry blossom with mono no aware dates back to the 18th century scholar Motori Norinaga. The transience of the blossoms, their exquisite beauty, and as well as their volatility have all been associated with life and death, as well as the acceptance of your destiny and karma. 11. Peak bloom time is April, maybe. Although individual trees may only bloom for a few weeks each, when different varieties are planted together, you can often see an extended blooming season. Early April is probably your best bet to view the blossoms, but the weather each year can make it difficult to plan a trip around. The blooming season throughout Japan extends from mid-March to early May. Because of the wide range of climate, the southern area of Kyushu blooms first, and then progressively blooms northward through Osaka, Tokyo, and then finally in the Hokkaido area, the northernmost island farthest away from the equator. Now, if you'd like to learn about the use of sakura trees in Japanese gardens and some of the many myths surrounding them, check out this video.